Hi, I'm Mike Hansen. We're here at ArtSync in our new studios down at King and Dufferin, and a wonderful guest with us today. Somebody who, as well as a sculptor, painter, is also a magician, illusionist, and does scenarios that shock the viewer, if not befuddle them a bit. I think I referred to you in a writing as the Artful Dodger. Iris Häussler and her wonderful new show, also known as, which is the first show that actually we see you.
That's right.
Because every other
Here
show
in Canada,
in Canada,
in Europe, it was different. I had basically shows in museums and in galleries, and I had the site-specific installation, and it was kind of going like that. Here in Canada, it's the first show where my name is on immediately.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that we can finally put a face to the objects because everybody else has been imaginary, right? So the beautiful...
I'm not sure if you're talking here with an extra, you know.
Hmm? As an extra?
You might talk here with an extra.
Yeah, maybe.
We didn't do a genetic testing, you know?
That's true, that's true. Well, we're going to do a DNA test after the interview. And just make sure you're you. Well, let's talk about, we'll talk about this show, but first I'd like to put people in historical context of your work, or at least what you've done here.
Thanks.
Is to build character studies. Create work under the name, the guise of someone else. And most of the work is very art brutish. You know, it's very primitive. It's or it could be counted as outsider art. It looks like it's, in a sense, obsessive hobbyist in a way. Like the people you create are obsessive. Yes. Right? And
they're all driven by something that they cannot really narrate, but they have to find a language for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's beautiful. We could talk about the last one, which was the Amber Project, I guess. I can't remember the exact name. I'm sorry.
The very last one was the Sydney Biennale, was Ted Wilson.
Oh, now tell me about that one. I didn't see anything about that one.
Well, because it was in Sydney, it was not here.
That's right.
But it was of a person who was grieving an old lost love, and in the process of that couldn't get over it, started creating this inverted sculpting beeswax objects where he then encased little other objects that were hidden and could only be seen over X-rays. And he got so deep in the story that the person who was researching him, I always have a layer of someone who's looking into this story, got lost in his stories too, and then basically reenacted this practice. So he had layer over layer over layer of people who are trying to hide things, but also to protect them and to keep them. And in the end, what you saw was sculpture.
Wow.
That looked like corals or like roots or...
It's in the back room at the show right now.
There are some, I call them prototype of obsessions, because I created these pieces before I created the pieces in Sydney on site. Wow.
Now, how does this gestate? Like, you create these incredible artifices. They're like these beautiful illusions of people that never existed. This is like, I think, it's like a mix between theater, novel, and film. It's all fictitious. Though it's not, because there's got to be some of you in all of this, because you've made all the object. Where does this come from? Like, this sense of fiction, this sense of the novel being played out, because you set up full histories of these people. Pretty intense histories too. And that,
well, it's basically I set up biographies, and then biographies exist always in a historic and social context. So I weave my biographies, my characters, into the site that I'm given or the site that I choose, and into a certain moment in time. And so the stories appear so real because they are fed by reality, what they are woven into.
Yeah, well,
you know, so.
Well, how do you deal with the response? A lot of it's positive, but there's been a lot of backlash. Like even the National Post, when the Joseph show opened, had their front page was like kind of a little upset at you.
Yeah, I mean, there were people who eluded the city of Toronto because the logo of the municipal archives looked a little bit like the city hall building.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was an open book, but I made it, of course. Of course.
Yeah, yeah, of
You
course.
play. And then they checked on that, and they eluded the police, and they, eluded the Art Gallery of Ontario to look into this imposter who is stealing an old guy's work. All these things happen. That's true. Beautiful things happen too, that people learn that is a fiction, and they turn around and they say, I wouldn't have gotten so deep into it if I would have known it's a fiction in the beginning. So it goes both ways. I have people at Harvard writing about my work and doing their thesis and stuff, and I have people who say her tongue should be cut out, or recently at the Amber Project, she should be killed.
Oh my God.
So I mean,
well, I just love the whole scenario that you're building. It's what art is about. It's about
I hope so.
creating this illusion, in a sense. We don't need to have today portrayed because it's right there already. I love the fact that you're creating these illusions and that there's this magic behind it, and you go so deep.
But I mean, the reason why I go so deep is because I actually don't want to fool anybody. I'm the last person who wants to lie. And I'm the last person who wants to hoax. So I must create these installations so hyper-realistic that I believe in them 100%. And then happens basically when in my sleep I could open a drawer, and these drawers have to be full. And they have to be full with time-relevant artifacts or daily items that convince me this is all reality. So I create the material evidence to convince myself that it could have been possible to the degree that I could turn to Micheal Hansen and say, you prove to me that it's not true.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic.
And I think that's what me and the visitor gets again on one level, and I experienced that with many tours through the Amber piece and through the Wagenbach piece, that we have this deep, deep longing flowing in our blood veins about stories where something dedicates his or her life to something that's bigger than their normal life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's a passion that I have too.
I understand that when you do these projects, you talk to these people while you're working on them.
Yes, that's correct.
I think that's great. No, that shows the immersion. I mean, that's why it's so believable.
Well, for Joseph, my neighbor's daughter, she thought that I have a relationship with an older man because I had boarded up the studio windows. I went to Salvation Army or Value Village, and I bought men's clothes, and I took them on, and I pretended to be a friend of Joseph and to just help him executing his work. And I went very deep in that, so deep that at the end of the day, I had such back pain that normally a 75-year-old has. So I went deep, it's true. But then, on the other hand, I have to step back because I'm a haptic conceptual artist. I'm conceptually trained. I have to step back. I have to basically curate the whole thing. And I think that might be what hopefully keeps me sane.
I gotcha. I got ya.
You have to have a certain distance. If you don't install that, then the work would be probably therapeutic, but I don't know how much it would be contemporary art.
Do you fall back philosophically anywhere on this? Like, is there some sort of reading that one day affected you, that you were going to start inventing these people, artists, and that
you mean art historically, the reference?
Historically or psychologically, philosophically?
More psychologically, in a way that I loved sifting through the miscellaneous newspaper pages and look up small stories that are often overlooked. And of course the stories that you find someone who is for 3 months sitting behind his TV and dead for 3 months, Mm-hmm. You think about how can something like this happen? How can someone live such an unobserved, unwatched, and uncared life? And then your imagination starts coming up. But basically it started with portrait work that I was thinking about when I did my first piece in Vienna in 1989, when I was thinking about portraits of people, and I found it a little bit superficial to try to go do a sculpture or whatever, and I was thinking, if I go in any kitchen of any person's home and I open an average miscellaneous drawer, I get a better portrait than just taking one picture of someone who has put on a hat or some makeup and tries to deliver a picture. So that there we go into environment, into daily life items, into things that I'm interested in beside the sculptural work that I do.
No, yeah, because it is portraiture. You know, I agree with you 100% there. But it's anthropological portraiture in a sense.
Well, that's
right?
why I have the second layer of people who are investigating in it. And that's something I started in Canada.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
So there's something that distinguishes my work from the German part and the Canadian.
Well, see, that was something I wanted to ask you about too. Is your stuff based partially on your own immigrant story? Because every person you've done is an immigrant who've come here to Canada, right? And
not in Australia.
Okay, but okay. I mean, for what we've seen here and the works that have really, you know, shook up the art world here, or in a sense, immigrant stories. You did the Irish immigrant in the 1800s. You did Joseph the German immigrant after World War II.
Yeah, but there are non-immigrant stories too, like Ellen's Gift that is shown at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts at the moment in the show More Real, and it's shown at the moment. This show, actually, where the inverted sculpting that I invented for that is based on the Amber Project, is about a woman who was not an immigrant. So there are some stories that's not the immigrant story. And I would not want to reduce all the stories back to my life. But of course there are crossing points.
Yeah, your experience has to run through this.
Yes, and I mean, Wagenbach immigrated to Canada in 1962. If someone is very attentive, notice that I'm born in 62. But I try to feed my work not with my biographies, but with the time it takes place in. So I can go in the 19th century and completely forget about my life. And I also do, when I take something that's out of my own generation, I try to avoid using pictures of my family or of me. I go to great lengths to go on eBay or to flea market to collect artifacts that could have related to my generation but are not out of my fundus.
Yeah, I gotcha. That's, again, escaping that role of authorship in a sense by not having yourself there.
And you want to speak to a broader audience in a way. You don't, you know, this is, in a way, this is not therapeutic work. This is not that I have to get something out in order to survive. You know, I think I'm beyond that as a visual artist who is working since the last 30 years. So I have a bigger repertoire, I guess, than if I would be one of the characters and caught up in this world.
Well, see, that's an interesting segue, because repertoire is something that you see at the brand new show at Daniel Feria. We get to see your repertoire, and I was really taken by your encaustic paintings.
They are not encaustic paintings.
They're not. They're wax.
No, they are it's completely wrong. So they would be encaustic paintings if I would paint. What I don't do for this project or for these works. These are objects, because the clothing, so the patterns of the flowers that you see, the patterns of the clothing that is involved in wax, they are in the wax.
So using wax as an encasement.
They are casts. And you see that on the sides, you can see that the objects are in. So it's basically an in-between sculpture and painting. They are objects. And so I have to insist it's not encaustic.
Okay. Wax plays a really big role in your work. Why? Why wax out of everything? What do you find about wax?
Well, I work with industrial wax. I did work a lot with salvage wax in Germany that I got from pilgrim churches where they collect all these candles that are given. Wax in general has this beautiful characteristic that it protects something. I mean, we go back to the Egyptian mummies and the first paintings that were encaustic paintings.
On the
we go back to the first practices of human beings trying to preserve food in jars, things like this, with a layer of wax. but also, so it's protective, it's old, it's atavistic in a way, and you think, oh, something wax can be kept for decades, for centuries, but on the other hand, with 100-watt light bulb, I'm just seeing if you have one here,
Yeah.
you can
Destroy it.
you can destroy it.
Oh, 30 degrees below zero will destroy it too.
So you have this vulnerability of the material and the sturdiness in one. So all these reasons speak working with wax. It's addictive.
I want to thank you for coming down, but is there anything you'd like to add in here before we wrap up? Because I think the show at Daniel Feria is great. You get this wonderful encapsulation of your it's almost like a retrospective in a sense.
No.
But it's not, I know. But it allows you to be you.
It's not a retrospective because it only shows basically 4 characters out of many. But what is nice, what I want to mention, is that someone told me, Iris, you know, it's the first time that Daniel gave the space to one artist. And I said no. Because I share the space with Joseph and with Amber and with Ted Wilson. So there we go. It's all going around.
Also known as the group show. At Daniel Feria Gallery until May 11th. That's at Lansdowne and Bloor area. And a wonderful show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was fabulous.
Great to see you.